Thank you very much for the invitation. Indeed, 2 months ago, I did a lecture here at university about the war cemeteries designed by Sir Edwin Lutyens. So I combine, during my career, research and design. Today, I will speak about the design of the Christelijk Lyceum Delft. That's a school in Delft. I didn't prepare the answers to the questions about structure and architecture, but during the discussions this morning, a quote from a professor from Eindhoven, Wim van den Berg will know him, Geert BK, came to my mind. And as I well quote him, architecture is the underlying structure of buildings, or music, or novels. And this structure combines form, function, and construction itself. What Durand added, that was about 200 years ago, that economy became important, because for palaces there was always enough money. And after the French Revolution, public buildings were made, new public typologies, and based on economical structures. And I think economy is very important in the raise of our buildings, especially the buildings we do in our office, social housing, schools. So I will present one of these. I start with a short presentation of my office. The first building we did around 1990. It was in the urban plan of Alvaro Siza. He was invited in The Hague. And he reintroduced brick in Holland. So that's very important, because in these days called modern architects built in stucco and steel. And Siza said, why don't you design in your own tradition? Later on, I built my first school, and I discovered that it was very productive to use the facade also as a load-bearing construction, because you had a free plan for the changing school types. Architecture on an urban scale is this urban plan for Overhoeks in Amsterdam, where we used the grid of the parkings, which are under all the buildings, for the typology of the buildings. So you can say architecture is the underlay for urbanism in this plan. And we were able to build one of these buildings. And the whole area will appear as a garden city of the future, I think. A garden city with apartment buildings in a park and in a very high density. We worked 10 years on this plan for the center of Leidse Rijn, based on the plan by Jo Koenen. And this is an office building called Uffizi, also based on the grid of the underlying parking. And today I will focus on the school building in Delft. It's a building which is an extension of an existing building. You can see it on the left side. They asked for a technasium. So what's a technasium? Something new. It's a combination of a gymnasium and a technical school. And the idea was to stimulate pupils to go to the technical university and to stimulate to work with their head and their hands together in the building. So when they were 15, 16, 17 years old. Idea came up to not to make a typical school building, but to design a factory building, because it was a technical building, and we transformated a lot of old factories, and all of you, and we think these buildings are able to have different functions. Were not only used as factories, but you can have theaters in it, offices, schools, apartments. So we want to make a building which was maybe now useful for a school, but later on you could use it as an office building, as a workshop, or as an apartment building. So a kind of neutrality. So the proportions are very important in this. And we were inspired by Schinkel's Bauakademie. You will all know because we are in Germany. And Schinkel, why? Because this is a massive brick building, and Schinkel was inspired by factories in Manchester. And it was, I think, the first time he was able to make a kind of utilitarian building instead of a palace or a church. A building which had different functions. On the ground floor were shops to pay for the economy of the building. It was otherwise not able to. They were not able to build it. On the first floor was the Bauakademie, and on the second floor was his own office as Rijksbouwmeister, and also there was his apartment. So it was a building with many functions, and it had a very rational brick structure, but the facade, he added some classical elements to, you can say, correct the proportions of the building. So what have we done with this idea of the factory? So this is the site. The site was very limited. There was not a lot of space, and there was not a lot of money. So we had only 1,000 euros square meter. So we had to think in every decision: can it be cheaper or not? The floor plan. It's a simple rectangular building. The construction is made out of concrete and steel. The facades are load-bearing as much as possible because that combines two functions. And in the building are 3 construction lines, 2 with piers and 1 central with columns. On the sides where there is enough light, there can be classrooms or workshops. All the walls are removable. And in the center is the central staircase. So I only showed you the first floor. So this is the section of the building. The height of the floors are exactly the same as in the existing building on the right side. You see the 2 stairs and the construction of the facades. A picture of the interior. When you don't have too much money, I think you can take very easily decisions, because when it's a cheaper solution, you have to choose it, otherwise the building will not be built. So what you see is the construction, concrete columns, concrete piers in between the window frames, a steel structure which supports the floor elements, a white element which hides the installations and which is covered by acoustic panels, frames of oak wood, as much glass as needed to bring light from the classrooms to the central space and the light from above. The central stair, which is wide where it's needed and where it's smaller where it's not necessary to make it as wide as on the ground floor. This is the first stair. Here you end on the second floor. You see the construction of the concrete pillars the steel beam, the floor elements, the piers of the inner construction walls, and a view to the side of the facade. And acoustic panels in the classrooms where there will be, which is needed as much as possible. For the window frames, we studied how to maximize the glass, but not too much. So in Holland, the brick walls are the cheapest you can build with. So a closed wall is cheaper than a window frame. And then we maximized also the height of the windows, because it's the idea of the daylight factory from Albert Kahn 100 years ago, to bring light as far as possible into the classrooms. And no glass on the lower side, because you will not need it when you're sitting in the classroom. So then we got about 40% of glass and 60% of brick. And then we could express the construction on the outside where the pillars were. So we made pillars of vertical pillars of brick, and in between the non-load-bearing fields. Here you see the other facade. What you see, that it refers to the construction on the inside, but it has the outside has its own appearance. So we expressed the load-bearing piers, but we didn't want to express the floor lines. And what we did is to express the sills. So the sills are under the windows. They are needed where the windows are, but they are not needed where they are not. But we use them as, you can say, shadow lines in the facade. And we use the brick patterns to emphasize the different functions of the parts in the facade. So we have a traditional brick bond in the vertical piers, we had a tile bond in the non-load-bearing pieces, and we had a vertical bond in the plinth. So in the construction drawing, you see that the lines of the sills are on another level than the lines of the floors. And you see also the non-load bearing and the bearing pieces in the interior. What is interesting, I think, about working on this facade, that we could have made just a brick box like we did in our first school you saw, but we were interested to please the eye, what you can say, with some tectonics, some of the dressing of the building. So the brick is here not like in the Schinkel building a construction material, but it's a dressing material. But with this dressing material, you can give the building the expression you want. And what the expression we wanted was to play with the interior, to play with the expression of the structure, but also to play with proportion, light and shadow. The division of the windows was based on the idea that we wanted to have as much light in the building, but also to have as much fresh air in the building. So it's really this rational factory ideas. And so the windows could be opened above 1.5 meters. So you can open them when in sunny days when they need a lot of fresh air. Okay, thank you.